Welcome to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and their journey. Now, let's get started with the show.
Okay, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here, and the co-host of this show. We feature top entrepreneurs and business leaders sharing their stories. And this episode is brought to you by EO San Francisco. The entrepreneurs organization known as EO is a global peer-to-peer network of more than 14,000, 15,000, 16,000, I think now, influential business owners with 198 chapters in 61 countries. And if you're a founder, co-founder, owner, or controlling shareholder of a company generating over 7 figures in revenues per year, and if you want to connect with other like-minded successful entrepreneurs, EO is for you. EO San Francisco chapter enables leading entrepreneurs in the Bay Area to learn, grow, and achieve greater success. To learn how it works or to come to a test drive and learn about it, go to eonetwork.org/San Francisco. And of course, this episode is also brought to you by my company, Rise25, where we help B2B businesses to get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with Done For You podcasts. And this week, we've got a great guest. Her name is Laurie Corona. She had a family dry cleaning business called Greene's Cleaners that she recently sold. And now, so she's on to the next chapter, some consulting, maybe some coaching. And so we're going to talk about that whole journey of taking over family business, growing it, building it up through a bunch of different challenges along the way, getting sued, maybe a couple of different things, and then finally exiting that business. So Laurie, I'm excited to have you here today. And let's start with your parents actually bought this small dry cleaning business, which is in the beautiful Napa Valley, before you were even born. And so you kind of grew up in this business, and we were talking beforehand, but the one thing you knew as a kid was, I am never going into the family business.
Yes, true. All of us kids I have a couple brothers, worked there in high school and such, and even as very young children doing odd jobs. And I was sure once I went to college, I was not coming back.
But it's not like you went and studied art or history or something along those lines. You did study business, right?
I did, but I did a double major in philosophy. So I wanted to study philosophy, but I did actually listen to my dad's sage advice of also study something that makes money. So I did a double major.
Wow, quite the dual personality there between business and philosophy.
Very.
Yeah. But you end up marrying a guy who was interested in taking over that business. So Alonzo, your husband, actually, you guys returned back to Napa Valley, also something you thought you weren't going to do, but you come back to Napa Valley. And tell me about what the early conversations were like. But your husband was interested in joining the family business.
Yeah, so my husband we dated for quite a while before we got married. So he'd gotten to know my parents a lot, and, they'd gotten to a point where they wanted to consider retirement, but really liked the idea of keeping the business in the family. And Alonzo had grown up, and he was also a business major, always sort of wanted to own his own business, and was like, well, what do you think if we go and I work for them? I was like, great. As long as you work for them, we'll try it out. I'm not sure how I feel about going back to Napa, but we'll give it a try. We could see the opportunity that, being business owners gave us. We also graduated in 2002 at UC Santa Cruz. So on the .com bust. So all the jobs we thought we were going to get in Silicon Valley no longer existed. So it seemed like, okay, why not? Let's try this out.
Yeah. And so what was it like for you when your husband was working in the family business? Did he have tensions with your parents? What was that family dynamic like?
He generally worked well with my parents. Occasionally, feathers would get ruffled about different things. He would bring new ideas in and try to modernize things and stuff. And every once in a while, stuff would come up, but they actually always worked really well together. So he was a much better fit than I was, for sure.
Yeah. And so at some point, now you go back, you get your MBA. So you're still in business and you're working in other businesses. And at some point you make the decision to join the business. Were your parents still involved at that point? Were they checked out?
No, we had already bought it. So we purchased the business from them in 2009. And so at that point they were fully retired. And Alonzo was still running the business, and I was still working for a manufacturing company. And we did that for a few years, and then we had the the business went through a lot in those years. And in 2013, I left the company. I was kind of burned out on the corporate world, left the company I worked for and actually started a fitness studio. So I don't even know if you knew this part. I did own a fitness studio for a few years. And in that time frame, which shared a building that we had purchased with the Greenes, Alonzo had gotten kind of burned out with all the things that the business had been through over the few years we'd owned it. And he asked me to come in, kind of take over the bookkeeping, we were going to work together was the plan. And this was 2017. So I closed my fitness business and moved into Greene's. In less than a year, I completely took over the CEO role. So we kind of made a big flip flop.
Before we get to that, though, I want to ask about, you did have a very rough period in the 4 to 5 years after you took over the business. So first of all, you take over the business in 2009. We've got the 2008, 2009 financial meltdown. A lot of people lost jobs in that period of time. I imagine a lot of people were paying less on dry cleaning. And then you also got sued in that time period. So talk to me a little bit about what that experience was like in the first few years of owning it.
Yeah, so we went through kind of everything. So like you said, we bought the business on the, cusp of that big recession. And at the time, dry cleaning it's a luxury good. Greene's is, a very high-end dry cleaners. So it was easy for people to say, we're just going to clean a little bit less often. Maybe I'll wear that shirt one more time. So we had to get creative and I did, even though Alonzo ran the company, I did do a lot of background with him, like would go through financials and he'd say, hey, what do you think we can do here? So I was always we did always talk about it. I was definitely a partner in the ownership. So we went through all that kind of restructuring, some customers getting more into B2B and stuff. And then in 2012, we purchased a building to move our production into, which in and of itself was a huge project. We bought a kind of random white elephant building that needed a bunch of work, and moving anything that requires production equipment is a big deal. We were able to do it with zero downtime and dry cleaning, which is almost unheard of in the industry. So it was a lot of long hours, long days. Now, mind you, our daughter was born 6 months before we bought the business. So we also had two young children at this time.
Wow.
So we'd like to do it all at once. And so in the process of moving our facility, our landlord sued us when we exited. And that became a whole nother thing. So we were kind of all in on this new building, all of our assets were in it. And then we had to start ponying up all these lawyer fees to fight the landlord. And that went on for, I think, 2 years. Wow. 2 years, a lot of dollars, a lot of, do I really want to do this? Is it actually worth it? Are we going to make it through? We, went through all of our personal assets, most of the business assets. And, it turned out being a wash. Our insurance company ended up covering it, and it not being our problem or even our fault. We didn't have any guilt involved, but the only people that made out, as usual, were the lawyers. So it was very taxing and very draining, and took a lot of time away from running the business.
So it's an interesting point. Even though in the end you made out okay, you said insurance covered it, you still were paying out of pocket, it sounds like, for a chunk of that time.
We paid out of pocket for 18 months, maybe more, all the insurance, all the lawyers and everything. And I mean, there was a point where we sat in a conference room in San Francisco with 12 lawyers around a table. Wow. It was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Oh
my God.
It was like, so it was a learning experience, but we were able to get through it.
Yeah. And there must have been times in that period where you were saying, do we want to keep on doing this, or do we want to just stop, give up?
There was definitely some times where it was like, is this really worth it? What happens if we just let it go? What happens if we don't, we end up having to pay even more money that we don't have? But we always thought of all our employees and their families, and So really giving up wasn't an option for us. We just had to keep finding a way to make it work.
Yeah. Now, you and I are both a member of the EO San Francisco chapter. Were you a member of EO when you were going through this crisis?
I wish I was, man. It would have been a lot easier. No, I didn't join EO until 2019. So
It's funny
I
because
joined.
that's
So
kind of what EO is for these types
it
of
would have
that type
been
of.
so helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. To just have that sounding board of other founders to help you through it. Yeah. So you survived this. You said in 2017, you end up joining to do the books as you described it. You end up taking over in the CEO role. Was there any pinch me moments where, I think it was a new facility, so it wasn't the same facility as you'd worked at in high school, but you'd worked there in high school or you worked there as a kid, you ran around and all of a sudden now you're CEO of this same company.
There was a lot of how did I end up here? So I
Yeah.
actually had a friend that I had, we worked at Greene's in high school together. And he also came back to Napa after college. He's, track coach at one of the high schools. And he had come into Greene's to do something for the team. And he was like, "You said you were never going to do this." I was like, "I know, I'm here. Don't have to call
You're
me
like,
out on
I'm in
it."
a different role though. I'm the boss now. I own the joint.
Yeah, no, he told me I had adamantly said I would never own it. But, you get a little smarter than you were at 17, thankfully.
Right. You can't
And
hold it against us what we say when we're 17.
right. Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a few times where it was like, is this really what I want to do? I think with everything we'd gone through at that point, Alonso was very burnt out on the role. And I could see that and could see like, okay, you need another strong support. And we've always worked well together. So we did work well for a while. And then he kind of pulled away. And I just at one point said, okay, I'll do it, but I have to do it like all in. Like here's your basket of stuff. You got to give me your office and you can, work in a different office or from home and we'll switch roles up. So he moved into the marketing kind of area, which I hate doing and I'm not good at. And I just did all the leadership.
Yeah. And now he also took an interest in technology and he ends up developing a solution that in retrospect actually was really helpful for you going into COVID, which was a more effective way to communicate with your customers, leveraging new technologies because, these days there's kind of an expectation of being able to communicate more effectively. It kind of drives me bonkers when I get a message from someone and they say, call our office to schedule something. I'm like, come on, please. Can I just email or text or something? So, how did that come about, that software?
So, precisely that so our business is mostly pickup and delivery. It was about 80%. And then, COVID, we had the ability to be about 100%. But pre-COVID, we were really frustrated with the software we had and how customers wanted to know where their clothes were. And it would give them like your order's ready, but that was it. And they couldn't respond to it and they couldn't ask a question. And so we had people were constantly on the phone. We had more customer service people than really made sense for the amount of people that actually came into the building because again, everyone is getting delivery, but because they were answering all these ridiculous phone calls. And we started talking about it and we realized most of the phone calls boil down to like 10 questions. Every once in a while you get some weird outlier, but there's really not that many things you need to know from a business. So he started researching some software and stuff. And we had an app through our software company that didn't work well. Kind of got rid of that and just sort of developed this chatbot system. And then we even ended up changing the software we used for our POS so that we could have better tracking and it integrated better with what he was developing. So that customers could ask their questions, they could schedule their pickups, they could know where their clothes were, all these things when nobody was around to answer the phone. And we started tracking phone times and app usage and things, and realized most people interact with the company early in the morning and late at night when we're not open anyways. So
Yeah.
it was more
So when they're
convenient
thinking
for
about
customers.
where's my clothes
Right.
late at night. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They're not thinking about that like while they're at work in the middle of the day. So that was a pretty logical progression and something for us to do, but we had to develop our own to be able to use it. And it was really helpful in COVID when we went to like 100% delivery for a while. And, we had to cut back on our staffing, and we actually found we needed much less staff going forward, even when we reopened fully, because so many people preferred using this platform.
Yeah. Now it sounds like it's gotten great results for you as a company, and you still own this
Mm-hmm.
company, right? There's a separate company that you
Yes.
own now
Mm-hmm.
after having sold the business. Explaining to other cleaners is a different matter, correct?
Correct. One of the catalysts for wanting to sell the business was my frustration with the dry cleaning industry as a whole. Prior to joining EO, I belonged to multiple industry groups. Conversations were always the same. Nobody was using tech. I seemed to be the only person pissed off at the software company because it couldn't do something as simple as automatically send a credit card receipt when we charge the customer's credit card, things that are normal, commonplace with everything. And then I joined EO and saw what the difference in the organizations was like especially come COVID, because I joined just before COVID, and like the amount of knowledge and learning and sharing and creative thinking that I found with EO compared to these other groups. I was like, yeah, this industry, like I can't take it anymore. I can't keep telling people the things that we're telling them are useful, and they just go back to the old ways of doing things. And we kept saying this industry is changing. And then COVID came, and we're like, now the industry is really changing. Everybody is home, not getting dressed up, and still it was frustrating. So then we have this great solution for people that can't afford their staff because their business is reduced. And we've tried to explain it and just only a handful get it. We have a small number of other cleaners that also use the system, but it's a frustrating for the lack of tech adoption.
Yeah. Yeah. What was it like for you? Take me back to like March of 2020 when you start to see, COVID starts to pop up in the news. Did you anticipate it? Did you see it coming? Did what did you think as it started to unfold?
So we did, we had a couple big meetings with staff. We did anticipate, so being in Napa, our business is primarily tourist related. I mean, we do have locals and such, but we did a lot of linens for guest houses, hotel uniforms, things like that, we've always kind of tracked with the tourist season here and everything. So we knew that if people were going to start traveling less, you could see that happening. You could see it was going to come, which meant the hotels would not be busy, which meant the wineries would not be busy, which meant they would not need us. So, and then we started to see things like Zoom meetings happen, and we're like, okay, great. Like now people aren't even wearing pants. Like, who's going to get things cleaned? So we anticipated needing to cut staff. We also anticipated, which I had anticipated pre-COVID, the change in what people were cleaning, but really saw it even bigger in the like household kind of products, comforters, rugs, things that you're using maybe more because everybody's home all day. So we did see that as we saw how bad the hotels were getting and how slow our business was getting. I had the first meeting where I cried with the staff because I was like, I don't know what we're going to do. I don't like laying people off, but we're going to have to. And we had a manager actually volunteer to go on furlough to save other people's jobs. And it was just so touching that our team was willing to do that for each other.
Mm. What was that like as you reflect back on that, as a leader, showing that vulnerability, being willing to, to let your guard down and show real, genuine emotion in front of your team?
At first, it was a little embarrassing. I'm not someone that likes to show that kind of, emotion in front of, especially if I'm leading a team. But
Did it catch
and it
you
was
off
definitely
guard?
something they had never seen before. So I think they were all a little shocked.
Hmm.
But then afterwards, I was kind of glad that I let it happen because, they said, they were like, okay, we see how serious you're taking this and like how much you want to protect us and you want to protect everybody's jobs. And because that's what it was all about. And it was, I think it translated into my team stepping up in a really incredible way. And it definitely showed who was like all in for the company and who just showed up to a job, which made it easy to kind of decide who stayed and who went. We were
Yeah.
fortunate that as dry cleaners, we are an essential business, so we got to stay open.
You stayed open, just didn't have as much business.
We just didn't have as much business, yeah.
Yeah.
But we didn't have to ever shut completely, which was very fortunate for us.
Yeah, I mean, the businesses that did have to shut completely, it was just crushing for a big period of time. Yeah. And I want to get into the sale. You end up selling the business. This was about 6 months ago now, so end of 2021. But before we get to that, did you start to see a rebound? Did you pivot and find new services or anything like that? What, as the pandemic drew on, what were some other things that happened for you?
So, like I said, pre-pandemic, I had seen the industries had been slowly changing. Fast fashion has killed dry cleaning. There's, not a lot of people aren't going to pay our prices to clean something that is, that's the same price to clean it as it is to buy it. If you're talking some people's clothes. Now, people will bring their nice stuff and things. But we were already doing quite a bit of linens and household products. So we really pushed that already. And then we just shifted really hard, something we'd been thinking about. We just went ahead and pulled the trigger on. We put in a new rug machine so that we could clean rugs in-house. We expanded our alterations department. And just a lot more focus on those type of things, which really helped the business, and a lot of marketing around those things. So people knew that we did all the stuff that we do. And then also just kind of focusing on being really efficient, again, using tech to not have to have as much customer service staff, and then focusing on bringing in an item where, we can clean one comforter or 50 shirts. Like, clearly one is a better deal for us.
Yeah.
So, those kind of things we really focused on a lot, and that helped save the business. It helped bring it back up, and in the right areas as well.
Yeah. That alterations business must have been helpful for people like me who maybe put on a few pounds during maybe need some bigger pants. And so you end up selling the business at the end of 2021. How did that come about? Was it someone that you knew? Were you approached?
So we actually had started thinking about it in 2020. We were going to, I'd been prepping for it for a little while. And then we were like, okay, the beginning of 2020, we're going to post the business. We started talking to someone in the industry. And then we saw the signs of COVID. We're like, maybe we should just put that on hold for a minute. So smart thinking, we put that on hold. And the business, did actually do really well. Sales were down, but profitability was up. We did well through COVID. We pivoted well, and things started coming back really strong. Luckily, the tourist industry in Napa has boomed as soon as things opened up. So that was all helpful.
Yeah.
And so we thought, okay, well, let's just see, it's maybe the COVID year is going to hurt us and it's going to be hard to list it, but the previous years were really great. And actually I got approached on LinkedIn by a broker and was like, let me have a conversation with this person. Let's see what they have to say. And we really kind of clicked pretty quickly, and they did a valuation, which I'd already kind of done the numbers myself. My very first job out of college, I was a financial analyst. So it was something I was familiar with. And their numbers lined up with my numbers. So I was like, okay, cool. Like, they're not coming up with anything crazy, and I don't have an inflated view of what my business is worth. And so they posted it, and we had some pretty strict guidelines because Napa is small. We didn't want the name in the posting until someone had signed an NDA because, the deal doesn't go through, and then all your customers are worried. It's a kind of town where people talk. And we didn't want customers to be afraid. We didn't want employees to be afraid that business was not doing well. And we talked to a couple people. The buyers had vetted, or the brokers had vetted a few people for us. And then someone came along that was a really good fit. And they were in industry, which is helpful because dry cleaning is harder than people think, and has a lot of nuance, but also more business-minded in the way that Alonzo and I were. Also a couple about our age, owned some other dry cleaning businesses, but also had some other business background and thought about things a little differently than typical. And then when they found out who we were, the company name is very big in the dry cleaning industry. So they were very it was like the unicorn they didn't think they'd be able to get. So they were very excited to have this opportunity. And it's a long negotiation, but it worked out well.
What, for a lot of businesses that sell where it was a family business or they took over a business from their parents, then there's a lot of emotion around the idea of selling the business. Was that the case for you?
There was and there wasn't. I mean, there was it was something I knew. I had hit a point where I was doing the job I never wanted to have, and I didn't have the heart in it to grow it. And it was kind of at a place where either we sell or we double down and we grow. And I knew I didn't have it in me, right? To want to put my energy into growing it. But again, I felt like I had a lot of identity tied in Greene's. I'd grown up with it, then all our, chamber, all our affiliations in Napa. Most people know us as the owners of Greene's Cleaners, because the business is over 100 years old. So it's very well known in the Valley. So there was some of that. There was a little bit like, oh crap, I don't want to tell my parents because they might be really upset, Turns out they weren't.
They weren't. Okay.
It was actually okay. I think my dad was a tiny bit disappointed, but they understood. We also had our oldest, our 13-year-old was having some mental health issues, and we realized the kids needed our time, and that made it easier to sort of separate my own identity and, oh, am I going to miss being a business owner, or what's this mean to me? It didn't really matter anymore because we just need to take care of the kids.
Yeah. If you have something more important, puts it in perspective. Now you have been a coach for the EO Accelerator program, which I came up through. I'm super grateful for. It's an amazing program. For those who don't know what it is, go Google it, check it out. It's a great program for businesses that want to pass the 7-figure threshold. Talk a little bit about what that's been like being involved in that program.
I love being an accelerator coach. It's really rewarding to help small businesses, and especially when you see people that are really passionate about their business, kind of, point where we were earlier when we owned the business. And it helped me also see how much this was no longer what I should be doing, because it was like, oh, I don't have that energy. But to be able to share the experiences we've had and see when somebody kind of takes what you actually said and applies some info and takes knowledge from the learning days they have, and their business does grow, it's really rewarding. It also kind of keeps my business brain going while I don't have my own business to manage. So I like that part.
Yeah. Laurie, this has been great. Where can people go to learn more about you or connect with you or learn about the software company and coaching and consulting?
LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach out to me. And just find me, Laurie Corona, and it should be easy to search up.
Great. Yeah. All right, Laurie, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, John. Good talking to you.
Thanks for listening to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast. This episode is powered by Rise 25. Please subscribe and check out future episodes.